Phylogenetic position of the Formicidae 11. The family Formicidae belongs to the order Hymenoptera, which also includes sawflies, bees, and wasps. Ants evolved from a lineage within the stinging wasps, and a 2013 study suggests that they are a sister group of the Apoidea. 11. In 1966, E. O. Wilson and his colleagues identified the fossil remains of an ant Spicamurma that lived in the Cretaceous period. The specimen, trapped in amber dating back to around 92 million years ago, has features found in some wasps, but not found in modern ants. 12. The oldest fossils of ants date to the mid-Cretaceous, around 100 million years ago, which belong to extinct stem groups such as the Haedomyrmecinae, Spicamurminae and Zygrostimicinae, with modern ant subfamilies appearing towards the end of the Cretaceous around 80 to 70 million years ago. 13. Ants diversified and assumed ecological dominance around 60 million years ago. 14. 1. 15. 16. Some groups, such as the Leptonillinae and Martiolinae, are suggested to have diversified from early primitive ants that were likely to have been predators underneath the surface of the soil. 3. 17. Ants fossilized in Baltic amber. During the Cretaceous period, a few species of primitive ants ranged widely on the Laurasian supercontinent, the northern hemisphere. Their representation in the fossil record is poor, in comparison to the populations of other insects, representing only about 1% of fossil evidence of insects in the era. Ants became dominant after adaptive radiation at the beginning of the Paleogene period. By the Oligocene and Miocene, ants had come to represent 20–40% of all insects found in major fossil deposits. Of the species that lived in the Eocene epoch, around 1 in 10 genera survive to the present. Genera surviving today comprise 56% of the genera in Baltic amber fossils, early Oligocene, and 92% of the genera in Dominican amber fossils, apparently early Miocene. 14. 18. Termites live in colonies and are sometimes called white ants, but termites are only distantly related to ants. They are the suborder Isoptera, and together with cockroaches, they form the order Blattodea. Blattodines are related to mantids, crickets, and other winged insects that do not undergo full metamorphosis. Like ants, termites are eusocial, with sterile workers, but they differ greatly in the genetics of reproduction. The similarity of their social structure to that of ants is attributed to convergent evolution. 19. Velvet ants look like large ants, but are wingless female wasps. Morphology. Diagram of a worker ant, Neoponera varinae. Ants are distinct in their morphology from other insects in having geniculate elbowed antennae, metapleural glands, and a strong constriction of their second abdominal segment into a node-like petiole. The head, mesosoma, and metasoma are the three distinct body segments, formerly tagmata. The petiole forms a narrow waist between their mesosoma thorax plus the first abdominal segment, which is fused to it, and gaster abdomen less the abdominal segments in the petiole. The petiole may be formed by one or two nodes, the second alone, or the second and third abdominal segments. 36. Tergosternal fusion, when the tergite and sternite of a segment fuse together, can occur partly or fully on the second, third and fourth abdominal segment and is used in identification. Fourth abdominal tergosternal fusion was formerly used as character that defined the poneromorph subfamilies, Ponerinae and relatives within their clade, but this is no longer considered a synapomorphic character. 37. Like other arthropods, ants have an exoskeleton, an external covering that provides a protective casing around the body and a point of attachment for muscles, in contrast to the internal skeletons of humans and other vertebrates. Insects do not have lungs. Oxygen and other gases, such as carbon dioxide, pass through their exoskeleton via tiny valves called spiracles. Insects also lack closed blood vessels. Instead, they have a long, thin, perforated tube along the top of the body called the dorsal aorta, that functions like a heart, and pumps hemolymph toward the head, thus driving the circulation of the internal fluids. The nervous system consists of a ventral nerve cord that runs the length of the body, with several ganglia and branches along the way reaching into the extremities of the appendages. 38. Head. Bull ant showing the powerful mandibles and the relatively large compound eyes that provide excellent vision. Ant head. An ant's head contains many sensory organs. Like most insects, ants have compound eyes made from numerous tiny lenses attached together. Ant eyes are good for acute movement detection, but do not offer a high-resolution image. They also have three small ocelli, simple eyes, on the top of the head that detect light levels and polarization. 39. Compared to vertebrates, ants tend to have blurrier eyesight, particularly in smaller species. 40. And a few subterranean taxa are completely blind. 2. However, some ants, such as Australia's bulldog ant, have excellent vision and are capable of discriminating the distance and size of objects moving nearly a meter away. 41. 2 antennae feelers are attached to the head. These organs detect chemicals, air currents, and vibrations. They also are used to transmit and receive signals through touch. The head has 2 strong jaws, the mandibles, used to carry food, manipulate objects, construct nests, and for defense. 38. In some species, a small pocket infrabuccal chamber inside the mouth stores food, so it may be passed to other ants or their larvae. 42. Mesosoma. Both the legs and wings of the ant are attached to the mesosoma thorax. The legs terminate in a hooked claw which allows them to hook on and climb surfaces. 43. Only reproductive ants, queens and males, have wings. Queens shed their wings after the nuptial flight, leaving visible stubs, a distinguishing feature of queens. In a few species, wingless queens, ergotoids, and males occur. 38. Metasoma. The metasoma, the abdomen, of the ant houses important internal organs, including those of the reproductive, respiratory, tracheae, and excretory systems. Workers of many species have their egg-laying structures modified into stings that are used for subduing prey and d. 7. Leafcutter ant workers of various castes left and 2 queens right. In the colonies of a few ant species, there are physical castes, workers in distinct size classes, called minor, median, and major ergates. Often, the larger ants have disproportionately larger heads, and correspondingly stronger mandibles. These are known as maker ergates while smaller workers are known as microergates. 44. Although formally known as dinergates, such individuals are sometimes called soldier ants because their stronger mandibles make them more effective in fighting, although they still are workers and their duties typically do not vary greatly from the minor or median workers. In a few species, the median workers are absent, creating a sharp divide between the minors and majors. 45. Weaver ants, for example, have a distinct bimodal size distribution. 46. 47. Some other species show continuous variation in the size of workers. The smallest and largest workers in Kerbera diversa show nearly a 500-fold difference in their dry weights. 48. Workers cannot mate. However, because of the haplodiploid sex determination system in ants, workers of a number of species can lay unfertilized eggs that become fully fertile, haploid males. The role of workers may change with their age, and in some species, such as honeypot ants, young workers are fed until their gasters are distended and act as living food storage vessels. These food storage workers are called repletes. 49. For instance, these replete workers develop in the North American honeypot ant Myrmecocystus mexicanus. Usually the largest workers in the colony develop into repletes, and, if repletes are removed from the colony, other workers become repletes, demonstrating the flexibility of this particular polymorphism. 50. This polymorphism in morphology and behavior of workers initially was thought to be determined by environmental factors such as nutrition and hormones that led to different developmental paths. However, genetic differences between worker castes have been noted in Acromyrmex sp. 51. These polymorphisms are caused by relatively small genetic changes. Differences in a single gene of Solenopsis invicta can decide whether the colony will have single or multiple queens. 52. The Australian jackjumper ant Myrmecia pilosella has only a single pair of chromosomes, with the males having just one chromosome as they are haploid, the lowest number known for any animal, making it an interesting subject for studies in the genetics and developmental biology of social insects. 53. 54. Genome size. Genome size is a fundamental characteristic of an organism. Ants have been found to have tiny genomes, with the evolution of genome size suggested to occur through loss and accumulation of non-coding regions, mainly transposable elements, and occasionally by whole genome duplication. 55. This may be related to colonization processes, but further studies are needed to verify this. 55. Life cycle. Meat-eater ant nest during swarming. The life of an ant starts from an egg. If the egg is fertilized, the progeny will be female diploid; if not, it will be male haploid. Ants develop by complete metamorphosis, with the larva stages passing through a pupal stage before emerging as an adult. The larva is largely immobile and is fed and cared for by workers. Food is given to the larva by trophallaxis, a process in which an ant regurgitates liquid food held in its crop. This is also how adults share food, stored in the social stomach. Larvae, especially in the later stages, may also be provided solid food, such as trophic eggs, pieces of prey, and seeds brought by workers. The larvae grow through a series of 4 or 5 molts and enter the pupal stage. The pupa has the appendages free and not fused to the body as in a butterfly pupa. 57. The differentiation into queens and workers, which are both female and different castes of workers, is influenced in some species by the nutrition the larvae obtain. Genetic influences and the control of gene expression by the developmental environment are complex, and the determination of caste continues to be a subject of research. 58. Winged male ants, called drones, termed anner, in old literature. 59. Emerge from pupae along with the usually winged breeding females. Some species, such as army ants, have wingless queens. Larvae and pupae need to be kept at fairly constant temperatures to ensure proper development, and so often are moved around among the various brood chambers within the colony. 60. A new ergate spends the first few days of its adult life caring for the queen and young. She then graduates to digging another nest work, and later to defending the nest and foraging. These changes are sometimes fairly sudden, and define what are called temporal castes. Such age-based task specialization or polyethism has been suggested as having evolved due to the high casualties involved in foraging and defense, making it an acceptable risk only for ants who are older and likely to die sooner from natural causes. 61. 62. In the Brazilian ant Forelius pusillus, the nest entrance is closed from the outside to protect the colony from predatory ant species at sunset each day. About 1 to 8 workers seal the nest entrance from the outside, and they have no chance of returning to the nest and are in effect sacrificed. 63. Whether these seemingly suicidal workers or older workers has not been determined. 64. Ant colonies can be long-lived. The queens can live for up to 30 years, and workers live from 1 to 3 years. Males, however, are more transitory, being quite short-lived and surviving for only a few weeks. 65. Ant queens are estimated to live 100 times as long as solitary insects of a similar size. 66. Ants are active all year long in the tropics. However, in cooler regions, they survive the winter in a state of dormancy known as hibernation. The forms of inactivity are varied, and some temperate species have larvae going into the inactive state diapause, while in others, the adults alone pass the winter in a state of reduced activity. 67. Alate male ant, Prenolepis imparis. Reproduction. Honey ants, Prenolepis imparis. Mating. A wide range of reproductive strategies have been noted in ant species. Females of many species are known to be capable of reproducing asexually through Thelytokous parthenogenesis. 68. Secretions from the male accessory glands in some species can plug the female genital opening and prevent females from remating. 69. Most ant species have a system in which only the queen and breeding females have the ability to mate. Contrary to popular belief, some ant nests have multiple queens, while others may exist without queens. Workers with the ability to reproduce are called gamergates, and colonies that lack queens are then called gamergate colonies. Colonies with queens are said to be queen-right. 70. Drones can also mate with existing queens by entering a foreign colony, such as in army ants. When the drone is initially attacked by the workers, it releases a mating pheromone. If recognized as a mate, it will be carried to the queen to mate. 71. Males may also patrol the nest and fight others by grabbing them with their mandibles, piercing their exoskeleton and then marking them with a pheromone. The marked male is interpreted as an invader by worker ants and is killed. 72. Most ants are univoltine, producing a new generation each year. 73. During the species-specific breeding period, winged females and winged males, known to entomologists as alates, leave the colony in what is called a nuptial flight. The nuptial flight usually takes place in the late spring or early summer when the weather is hot and humid. Heat makes flying easier, and freshly fallen rain makes the ground softer for mated queens to dig nests. 74. Males typically take flight before the females. Males then use visual cues to find a common mating ground, for example, a landmark such as a pine tree to which other males in the area converge. Males secrete a mating pheromone that females follow. Males will mount females in the air, but the actual mating process usually takes place on the ground. Females of some species mate with just one male, but in others they may mate with as many as 10 or more different males, storing the sperm in their spermathecae. 75. In Cardiocondyla elegans, workers may transport newly emerged queens to other conspecific nests where wingless males from unrelated colonies can mate with them, a behavioral adaptation that may reduce the chances of inbreeding. 76. Fertilized meat-eater ant queen beginning to dig a new colony. Mated females then seek a suitable place to begin a colony. There, they break off their wings using their tibial spurs and begin to lay and care for eggs. The females can selectively fertilize future eggs with the sperm stored to produce diploid workers or lay unfertilized haploid eggs to produce drones. The first workers to hatch, known as nanodecs, 77, are weaker and smaller than later workers, but they begin to serve the colony immediately. They enlarge the nest, forage for food, and care for the other eggs. Species that have multiple queens may have a queen leaving the nest along with some workers to found a colony at a new site, 75, a process akin to swarming in honeybees. Nests, colonies, and supercolonies. The typical ant species has a colony occupying a single nest, housing one or more queens, where the brood is raised. There are however more than 150 species of ants in 49 genera that are known to have colonies consisting of multiple spatially separated nests. These polydomous as opposed to monodomous colonies have food and workers moving between the nests. 78 Membership to a colony is identified by the response of worker ants, which identify whether another individual belongs to their own colony or not. A signature cocktail of body surface chemicals, also known as cuticular hydrocarbons or CHCs, forms the so-called colony odor which other members can recognize. 79. Some ant species appear to be less discriminating, and in the Argentine ant Lynepithema humile, workers carried from a colony anywhere in the southern US and Mexico are acceptable within other colonies in the same region. Similarly, workers from colonies that have established in Europe are accepted by any other colonies within Europe but not by the colonies in the Americas. The interpretation of these observations has been debated, and some have been termed these large populations as supercolonies 80-81, while others have termed the populations as unicolonial. 82. Behavior and ecology, communication. 2. Camponotus sericeus, workers communicating through touch and pheromones. Ants communicate with each other using pheromones, sounds, and touch. 83. Since most ants live on the ground, they use the soil surface to leave pheromone trails that may be followed by other ants. In species that forage in groups, a forager that finds food marks a trail on the way back to the colony. This trail is followed by other ants. These ants then reinforce the trail when they head back with food to the colony. When the food source is exhausted, no new trails are marked by returning ants and the scent slowly dissipates. This behavior helps ants deal with changes in their environment. For instance, when an established path to a food source is blocked by an obstacle, the foragers leave the path to explore new routes. If an ant is successful, it leaves a new trail marking the shortest route on its return. Successful trails are followed by more ants, reinforcing better routes and gradually identifying the best path. 83-84. Ants use pheromones for more than just making trails. A crushed ant emits an alarm pheromone that sends nearby ants into an attack frenzy and attracts more ants from farther away. Several ant species even use propaganda pheromones to confuse enemy ants and make them fight among themselves. 85. Pheromones are produced by a wide range of structures including Dufour's glands, poison glands, and glands on the hindgut, pygidium, rectum, sternum, and hind tibia. 66. Pheromones also are exchanged, mixed with food, and passed by trophallaxis, transferring information within the colony. 86. This allows other ants to detect what task group, e.g., foraging or nest maintenance, other colony members belong to. 87. In ant species with queen casts, when the dominant queen stops producing a specific pheromone, workers begin to raise new queens in the colony. 88.